say because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy.
You know good and well I wouldn't vote for Mom Donnie. I wouldn't vote for AOC. I don't like the way Jasmine Crockett is talking. I don't think that helps the Democratic
Party. I have a last question.
I don't like that.
Question. Who are the leaders of your party right now? It's not Hakeem Jeffries and it's not Chuck Schumer. It's all those names I mentioned.
Sean, there is no leader for the Democratic Party. That's why they're in trouble. There is no leader.
So it's safe to say that everybody is tired of Representative Jasmine Crockett at this point. You could say the world collectively has Jasmine Crockett fatigue because it's well been known that she has absolutely no appeal to right-wingers or even independents, despite this left-wing theory that she's somehow a good communicator, even though she doesn't even speak proper English. But we, of course, recently covered the story in which her own fellow Democrat colleagues were privately complaining that she is basically really selfish and annoying. Nobody really gets along with this person. I know that's so shocking to find out. But what you might be even more quote unquote shocked to know is that apparently even her own staffers do not like her. According to a piece released today in the New York Post, her own staffers are running to the media complaining and alleging that she is basically an obnoxious, selfish, annoying, rude, and ultimately abusive boss, to which I have to say, isn't that just such a surprise to everyone that someone who acts selfish and rude and mean and annoying in real life also acts that way in private, to some degree as a completely good faith individual. Sometimes when you see stories like this in political news, you have to be a little bit skeptical because look, sometimes people, are scorned employees. They're just mad at their boss. They're trying to leak things or misrepresent things. But in an instance like this, it seems pretty undeniable when, again, if someone is acting the way they are in public and then all private sources, whether that's other Democrat congressmen or her own staffers, her own employees who work for her, are all collectively saying the same thing. Gee, it probably seems, ladies and gentlemen, like it is true. And all of these things really do strike a nail deep in the heart of the recent Democrat narrative that, Jasmine Crockett is real. She's authentic. She represents a fresh new Democrat Party that can stand for the people and all of this. Well, it turns out, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure that's exactly the case. So we'll bring you this story here today of apparently even her own staffers getting sick of her self-aggrandizing nonsense. First, though, folks, do us a favor as usual. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. You subscribing here, guys, is the best way to support our videos, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, I want to recap where we've been thus far because this news out of the New York Post from, again, her own staff is coming just about a week after The Atlantic released that piece on her, where essentially they exposed her to be this absolutely self-obsessed egomaniac, right? They're talking about how her lock screen on her phone was literally a picture of herself. They detected all of that. They asked her other Democrat colleagues in the House, and they all said the same thing. Yeah, she's just obsessed with herself and her own clout, and she basically thought she should have Democrat leadership positions simply because she had the highest social media following, right? We see a big ego problem here going on, but I want to kind of start by recapping this story so we can understand this is a repeated thing within the private Democrat circles within Capitol Hill in DC, that everybody is tired of this annoying individual.
Oh, how noble and sacrificial of her. Which is the real Jasmine Crockett, though? Well, the call for public service came and Jasmine answered. But back to that Atlantic profile, they saw something else in Crockett. A raging narcissism. And for a woman who claims to be so tough, she has exceedingly thin skin. They described her as highly conscious of her self-presentation. Crockett wore acrylic nails painted with the word resist and a set of heavy lashes over her brown eyes. The lock screen on her phone is a headshot of herself. And Crockett apparently thinks she should be able to control to whom a journalist speaks when they're actually reporting a profile. 4 days before this story was published, Crockett called me to express frustration that I had reached out to so many House members without telling her first. She told me, shutting down the profile and revoking all permissions. Yeah. And yet another gem that speaks to Crockett's highly racialized view of the world. From the same profile, Crockett said that Hispanic Trump supporters had almost like a slave mentality. I asked Crockett whether she had ever regrets about her public comments. She raised her eyebrows and replied, "I don't second guess." You know how that ends. Well, bless her heart.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind. This is what we are dealing with here. An insane megalomaniac, egomaniac. You know, there's a famous old saying that says that politics is show business for ugly people. And what does that mean? Well, very often in this industry, especially in Congress and DC and all of that, you have a lot of people who are basically overcompensating for something, right? A lot of people out there who probably, Jasmine Crockett, I think here's a prime example, who probably at some point in their life wanted to be, say, an actor or a singer or an influencer, or they're kind of jealous of famous people, I guess, in a sense. They go into politics and then they get this crazy big head about it because, again, they're basically overcompensating and the ego just goes through the roof. And I have to say, it is a truly dangerous mindset to give power to, right? Now, that said, Jasmine Crockett, besides being a congresswoman, really does not have real power, but in the sense that she was a president, you have a president who's basically constantly trying to fulfill this power trip or overcompensate. It really is a dangerous thing to be dealing with. But nonetheless, that said, let's now get into the story of today, where apparently, according to her own aides, her own staffers, here's the headline from the New York Post: Trump critic Representative Jasmine Crockett is a no-show boss from hell who terrorizes her staffers, according to aides. They use the term here, quote, all diva and no wow. Essentially, right? She believes, as I said, right? Show business for ugly people. She believes she's some type of famous singer or a Hollywood director. Hey, what are you guys doing, right? She thinks she can boss around her interns like that. And by the way, that's why she's so obsessed with things like her self-image. She wanted essentially the independent magazine shoot to be like a Vogue magazine style fashion shoot. Don't actually criticize me. Make it a puff piece. I'm going to threaten you if anything is bad about it. Because again, this is all an insane ego trip for her. That's why she only cares about the cameras. She doesn't care about actually being in Congress or doing the job of a representative, as we'll tell you about in this video. So there you have it. Here you go. Representative Jasmine Crockett has, of course, positioned herself as an unfiltered critic of President Trump, notably here earning regular TV appearances and an enthusiastic online following, which is truly what she's after, right? But congressional aides tell the Post that the Dallas Democrat is just as rude and mean to her own staff as she is publicly. Well, again, I have to say, it's such a shock that someone who acts like this publicly would also do so privately. Wow, aren't we all so surprised?
We're not going to do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just
you just voted to do it.
Y'all did it first, so you don't want to talk about
voted to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get clarification.
Look, calm down.
No, because this is what y'all do. So I'm trying to get
Miss
clarification.
Crockett, you're not recognized. Miss Crockett.
I can't hear you with your yelling.
Don't want
calm
me
down.
No,
can you please calm down?
Don't tell me to calm down.
Calm down.
Because y'all talk noise, and then you
You're
can't
out of
take
control.
Because if I come and talk shit about her, y'all gonna have a problem.
Hello, Congresswoman.
Horse manure. Well, that sounds like fun.
Wait, Congresswoman Crockett.
But it sounds.
Congresswoman Crockett, you were recently on a Tesla takedown call calling for violence on the 29th. Would you like to clarify your comments?
As you can see.
Congresswoman, will you condone violence at the Tesla?
Yeah, well, surely that must just be such a pleasant person to work for. I'm sure she's so different in private. Definitely doesn't have anger issues and a giant satiating ego and all this stuff. Definitely not abusive to the staffers, right? Well, apparently the answer here is yes. The liberal loudmouth has, of course, rocketed to fame since then, but three sources who have worked with or for Crockett say that she's rarely present when TV cameras are not rolling and terrorizes staff when she does appear. So in other words, she never actually shows up to work. Very seldom does she actually show up to Congress to do the regular sort of boring work of the representative. She only shows up when TV cameras are there to put on her performative show. Because again, guys, what did I say? Show business for ugly people. That is exactly what her satiating power trip truly is all about. Crockett is often not found at her government-provided suite in the Longworth House building, with one insider saying that she prefers to work from her nearby luxury apartment building, sometimes for weeks on end. So she never shows up to actually work with her staff, but when she does, apparently she's incredibly rude to them. Quote, she is laying around at her apartment, won't come to office, and really is just indifferent to staff and will scream at them, the former aide said. Well, again, so surprising. She's screaming in public. I guess she's also screaming in private. What a pleasant work experience. Quote, she is never in the office and is very disengaged. She does her bull blank BS that goes viral and then freaks out over the most random things. A second source here, close to Crockett's team, added that, quote, it is widely known that she's not nice to staff and is just not really a dedicated member focused on constituents. Now, look, I don't want to pile on because I've brought this up basically every time we talk about Jasmine Crockett, but I do want to mention a certain David Hogg, right? This guy who's running around posturing to be like the future of the Democrat Party. We need younger leadership. And, suddenly he thinks he's some type of political expert here after he basically got his job by being something of a DEI hire. Nonetheless, saying that we need real, authentic communicators. And of course, he was trying to primary Democrat incumbents because he feels like they're not doing their job. They're not truly fighting for the people. And recently, about like 2-3 months ago, when he went on the Breakfast Club, he noted Jasmine Crockett, right? He said that Jasmine Crockett is the fighter that our party needs. She's real. She's authentic. She's actually going to stand up to Trump. And yet, when you actually get down into the details, it turns out not only does she not do her job, she doesn't even show up to work the vast majority of the time. And when she does, she acts completely rude, crass, and obviously does not care much for her constituents. She's just a clout chaser. So I want to bring that up to once again mention that David Hogg's political judgment here is completely terrible. It's interesting because back when he was the vice chair of the DNC and trying to primary the incumbents, I said, look, it's not that David Hogg, and I called it, by the way, from the start, it's not that David Hogg doesn't have a point. He's absolutely right. Many of these old, senile geriatrics are holding down the Democrat Party. But I told you from the beginning that David Hogg's alternative, the solution of just adding these new, younger, louder people, right? The Jasmine Crockett's and now recently Pete Buttigieg's of the world who think that if you just say a bunch of cuss words, that's going to communicate and seem real to the American people. No, it's completely not. And these people, by the way, in their attempt to seem real and authentic, are coming off as completely fake and inauthentic. Big surprise. Hey, David, guess who was right here and guess who was wrong?
Jasmine Crockett.
Jasmine Crockett, I love her. She is amazing.
Yeah.
I think that people want to see somebody who fights and calls out the bullshit, ultimately. I think that's what Jasmine does, and we need a hell of a lot more people that are out there that are willing to do just that and call people out on their BS and not say, oh my God, Republicans are going to criticize me for saying this. Screw that. They're going to criticize you no matter what. So what we should be asking ourselves is, what are we really fighting for? Yeah. Because we know it matters, and I think Jasmine is frankly the type of leader that we're really looking to support in some senses, right? Somebody who is out there that frankly doesn't give a damn what the other side, at least the elected Republicans in Congress say what they believe in. And at least even if you don't agree with her, you know what she stands for. Yeah. Because she makes it very clear. And people are really craving that right now. They don't want more politicians that say talking points that it doesn't even feel like they believe, or you don't even really know what they mean. They want somebody who's out there that says what they believe and doesn't care what somebody else thinks about it. They want that authenticity.
Oh, really? Authenticity? Because you're dealing with some, and by the way, David Hogg, according to him, this is the new authentic leader they want, is someone who, according to her own staffers, only shows up to work when the cameras are around to do her own performative stunts, and then when she actually has to do any work or it's not as glamorous, immediately runs for the hills. Yeah. Okay, so here you have someone like many Democrats, like I've tried to warn them, are completely falling for the veneer here, even though I don't even understand what the veneer is, but basically, oh, she's like young and loud, and she says things that please liberal geriatric boomers watching MSNBC all day because she called Donald Trump a piece of blank. Ha ha. not really noticing that, that doesn't actually correlate with leadership ability. And this is exactly what her own staffers are saying. Continuing on here, you have a third source who has worked with Crockett, a third staffer of hers. They're all saying the same thing. By the way, it's accurate because she, again, is this like performative theatrical actor, saying, quote, she is focused almost exclusively on being an influencer, not a member of Congress, according to this third source, describing her as, quote, all diva and no wow. And you're stupid if you think so. When Crockett does show up on Capitol Hill, often to attend a committee hearing where she deploys a made-for-social media attack on Trump, and by the way, that's true, right? She's notorious for just screaming nonsense in congressional hearings, as we showed you before, and it kind of begs the question as to why she's not been censured on some level or penalized by the congressional body for acting the way she does, interrupting, shutting stuff down. Nonetheless, she prefers to have a staff, listen to this, she prefers to have a staff member drive her the short distance to her office in a rented car. A rented car. She needs the Cadillac Escalade rather than the staffer's own, a cheaper option commonly used by lawmakers. Again, I'm telling you, what did I say? Show business for ugly people. This person literally thinks that she's a celebrity, right? She's like Kim Kardashian or something, and she deserves the private security, the bougie treatment, all the luxury, right? You're a congresswoman, okay? Last I checked, you were not some type of wealthy person before you got into this. Where are you even paying from, by the way? Probably the campaign dollars that she's raising so much by grifting off of Democrat talking points on TV, right? So to all the Democrat boomers who think, oh, she's so real, she's authentic, she really speaks to me. Well, just know that your campaign donations are going to her renting like Cadillacs and Suburbans in order to like show up to Congress in style, instead of doing what most other lawmakers do in DC, which is the staffer just drives in their own car. Now going on, she apparently thinks she's like the president here or something, saying, quote, the staffer is expected to stand outside the vehicle. Oh, I called it, by the way, which has to be a Cadillac Escalade or similar upscale make, and open the door for her. She demands this, by the way. She demands this. Again, she doesn't really have real power, but how dangerous it would be to give this woman real and sincere power. She's a lunatic, total egomaniac, right? She needs to be treated like a chauffeur. It's like a limousine, apparently, going to work every single day, all because she has social media followers or something. By the way, I would like to also note, this woman is 44, okay? This is not some 23-year-old girl who's like on some power trip of the glam or something. No. This is a 44-year-old dealing with, I guess, something of a midlife crisis, right? Because probably in her 20s, this is the person she wanted to be. Now she believes she's something important. All of it is obnoxious. Going on here saying, quote, you're technically allowed to do this, but it's wildly inefficient. Instead of using the scheduler's car, she rents a car every week in DC, and an expensive one at that, by the way, right? It can't just be any car. She expects her staff to drive her around while she's in the back seat, calling it a power play, or I would say a power trip, akin to treating the staffer like an Uber driver. Yeah, well, what a complete lunatic. Crockett here is obviously a former criminal defense attorney and a Texas state legislator. She burst onto the national spotlight in 2024 when she was screaming at Marjorie Taylor Greene, going on there. But while Crockett tried to fundraise off of this Real Housewives-style viral clash, the Congresswoman's staff, which includes multiple gay and lesbian members, were left with mixed feelings after she called Marjorie Taylor Greene, quote, bleach blonde, bad-built butch body. Okay, so sitting member of Congress, by the way. So complaints poured in from lesbians who objected to Crockett's derogatory use of the term butch to attack Greene. She told her gay staff members, that's not offensive. You're stupid if you think so. It was kind of like how Trump says, the gays love me. Well, I mean, surely I have to say, if Jasmine Crockett's going to actually subscribe to all of the woke victim politics that she likes to play, then indeed, yeah, by their standards, you're not supposed to talk like that. And yet when they actually confront her on this, she just insults and denigrates her own LGBT staff members. So there you have someone, as I said again, who's completely insincere. She just wants to get in the viral clicks on the camera. 3 months later, when Crockett was given a coveted speaking slot at the DNC, where she ripped the former and future president as a vindictive, vile villain. Well, I think we can find someone here who is a vindictive, vile villain by the name of Jasmine Crockett, but it still goes on here, guys. Jasmine is also being accused of having, quote, a toxic staff environment. Crockett has apparently burned through employees at such a pace that she's becoming known as a present-day version of the late Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, long called the Capitol's toughest boss, right? She can't hold down anyone working for her. Everyone wants to keep on leaving because they realize they probably come there thinking, oh, she's a rising star of the Democrat Party. I'm so excited for this. You get there, she is a complete and total you-know-what censored word, okay? So it goes on here. A number of staff have become fed up with their treatment, while others have been fired or left on their own, a distinction often difficult to discern in Washington. This is true, of course. Some former aides have cited fear of retribution when declining to participate in this story. So many other former staffers also wanted to say something, but they're scared here that this absolutely insane egomaniac might try to blackmail them in response. It tells you a lot about the person you're working for here, by the way. They try to say these things about Trump, too. You know, they try to say, oh, he's a cult, you know, all this stuff. And then you get stories like this, like repeatedly, right? Quote, she thinks she's her own best advisor. She knows best, and she has this toxic staff environment, a source said. She gets rid of press people because she's like, I do all the press stuff. Well, yeah, clearly, you're doing such a great job of that. On one occasion described to the Post, Crockett reduced a legislative aide to tears. She made her own staffer cry, bellowing, do you really want to be here? And if not, you can leave. Another, the stories go on here, right? What a terrible person to work for. Another aide, a young black woman, was fired abruptly and confided to a colleague, quote, I don't want to hear Jasmine Crockett talk about helping black women when she just fired one for no reason. Oh, well, isn't that a great point, right? Keep in mind, she's a liberal, too. She's doing all this stuff about Medicaid, probably minimum wage, all the typical liberal garbage about how workers in this country should be treated better, and the Republicans are, always crapping on the little guy. And then take a look here. It's always so telling, right? How the Democrat politicians in their own private life actually treat the little guy. I think the same thing back to, say, and by the way, the accusations against Bernie were never as bad, but back in the 2016 and I think even 2020 campaign, he was running on a $15 minimum wage, and then he got attacked saying, hey, why do you not pay your staffers $15? I mean, typical case, but this obviously seems like she's probably a much worse person to work for. I can't frankly think of anyone worse to work for than Jasmine Crockett. I'm sure even people like Bernie are easier bosses. So it goes on here that Capitol Hill jobs are often filled based on personal connections and openings that are circulated around. But a source told the Post that a job listing for Crockett's team was recently shared among a large group of black Democratic women, but nobody expressed interest in the gig. Now, you would think that's kind of perplexing because Jasmine Crockett, one of the most well-known popular Democrat congresspeople at this point. Yet, when sharing it too, a bunch of black Democrat staffers, and female ones specifically, no one wanted the job. Why is that? Because she's basically persona non grata to work for in D.C. because of how insanely rude, crass, and abusive of a boss that she is. What a terrible person. What an utterly terrible person, right? But again, who is surprised? We tried to warn you. You would think that working for a black woman, if you were a young black woman or a young person of color, you would feel empowered in that space, said a former Democratic congressional aide. After all, they're all about woke. But truly, the only person she thinks and cares about is herself. The staff is really just an island unto itself because she doesn't care about the local issues happening in her district. Yeah, gee, you don't say. You don't say. You mean to tell me, say, David Hogg, that you're not actually dealing with someone who's trying to serve the people or truly improve the image of the Democrat Party? She's just out there to get herself famous and get an ego trip off of it? Yeah, again, gee, you don't say. She's more focused on get me on The View, get me on this late night talk show. Again, a wannabe influencer who is 44 years old. This is not a high school girl. This is not a college girl. This is a grown, middle-aged, about to be even beyond middle-aged adult. Okay, are you serious, right? But anyways, a lot of congressional hearings are on the most boring, basic stuff. So how it is at every hearing, it's about Trump. It's about Trump again and again. She just tries to make a moment. And it's like she's not actually doing any real work. True. She's at a hearing. We can be talking about the budget. They can be talking about appropriations. And she brings it back to Trump every single time because everything she does, of course, is performative. She causes some kind of tension and issue. The hearing has to stop, as we showed you in the clip. The chairman has to bang the gavel. It's like a spectacle and a show, but not everything has to be clipped for MSNBC. I mean, again, that's true if you're actually trying to be a representative. But if you're just trying to be an influencer, then this is exactly what we're dealing with. Crockett has apparently also cycled through several chiefs of staff, right? Because she can't get along with anyone. With one observer saying it's because they want to do her actual job. They want her, I should say, they want her to do her actual job, and the actual member of Congress isn't a fun and glamorous position. So unless you are somebody willing to say yes to all of the outrageous things that this egomaniac would like to do, you're not going to last long. You don't say. Okay. Crockett has not been coy about the treatment of her staff, recently offering 2 examples of rough treatments of subordinates in an interview with The Atlantic. But, it basically goes on here to say that, you should mention here, by the way, that she tried to threaten The Atlantic to get the article shut down and all of that. So here you have it. Worth noting as well that in May, she allegedly, we showed you this video actually at the time, that she allegedly boarded a commercial flight ahead of 2 handicapped people, according to Representative Lisa McClain, who posted photos of the incident. That's just Jasmine Crockett in a nutshell, truly. Such an amazing person, right, Mr. David Hogg? Her cutting in line in front of a handicapped person is really indicative of the type of person she is. Yeah, gee, you don't say. She is interpersonally very rude, and by the way, publicly also very rude, and doesn't get along well with people. The post has not received a reply after sending multiple emails requesting a comment from Jasmine Crockett. Nobody answered the phones at her DC or Dallas offices during the workday. Both went straight to voicemail. Yeah, probably because she's told them not to actually do any work, right? So there you have it. Again, not exactly surprised, but it is here worth noting that these are the type of people who are the most dangerous when you give them power. And, we tried to tell you, tried to warn you, this is an egomaniac, and even Democrats internally are saying, yeah, she's becoming a massive problem for us. Who knows whoever got the idea that because she's cussing and loud and obnoxious and rude and doesn't speak proper English, that's effective communication. But hey, when Democrat minds are that broken, when they're that desperate, I guess there you have it. But anyways, with all of that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Are you exactly surprised to find out that Jasmine Crockett is a terrible and abusive boss? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.